PFT PM, Tuesday, February 18, 2025. PFT Live off this week, PFT PM on this week. You know the drill by now. Whenever PFT Live is dark, hashtag no days off, hashtag except when we take days off. But there's still plenty happening in the NFL, even though this is one of the low tide weeks of the offseason schedule, because high tide returns next week with the scouting combine. Week after that, the run up to free agency, and then boom, all hell breaks loose. We're going to start with one of the items that is a precursor to the looming free agency frenzy, the opening of the 2-week franchise tag window. That's today. And as we all know by now, and if you don't, what are you doing here? You know by now. If you're an aficionado of the NFL to the extent that you pay attention to this podcast, you know that every year, every team has one franchise tag available to apply to someone who otherwise would be an unrestricted free agent. After completing 4 years of NFL service, contract expires, heads to the open market, blocked from the open market by the team that has the ability to say no, even though you might have earned a generational payday from some other team that values you more than we do, or more importantly, can only get you by giving you that significant contract. We can squat on your rights for 1 more year. And there was a time where they kind of sold this idea that it was some sort of an honor. It's not an honor. It's not a privilege. It is a restriction. It is golden handcuffs that keep you from getting a much bigger pile of gold elsewhere with no handcuffs. The franchise tag is a bad thing. The franchise tag restricts mobility of some of the league's best players. And what it also does, by holding down the top of the market because you don't have the best players partaking in that crush of big money that the dysfunctional teams throw at players just to get a win in the offseason press conference cycle, regardless of whether or not it helps the team win football games. By blocking the best of the best players, it keeps the market at each position from going as high as it could, thereby affecting all other players who play the position, because that market dictates what everyone else will make. This year, we wrote this yesterday at PFT, and there's a very good team-by-team summary. I don't like to direct traffic to other websites, but hey, there's enough food for all of us. ESPN.com put together one team after another, the various individuals who cover those teams for ESPN.com with their assessment of what each team would do. And at the end of the day, there's only really one franchise tag hotspot, Cincinnati and receiver T. Higgins. We'll talk more about the Bengals coming up. Now, Sam Darnold of the Vikings also in theory could be tagged, but Kevin O'Connell told us Super Bowl week, Friday, the day after he was named Coach of the Year for the 2024 regular season, that Sam Darnold has earned the right to become a free agent. That means they're not going to use the franchise tag on Sam Darnold. That is a positive way of saying we choose not to restrict the movement of this individual artificially with the application of the franchise tag, because we don't want to pay him $40 million for 1 more year. That's the real takeaway. If they thought it was in their best business interest to apply the franchise tag to Sam Darnold, they would. Any team would, except the ones that really don't know what the hell they're doing and aren't capable of figuring out their best interests. The Vikings have proven they're on the right side of that line, and they don't want to put themselves in a spot where the bottom line consists of $40 million given to a guy who might not be the starter in 2025. They seem to be ready to pivot to 2024 rookie J.J. McCarthy. So I think that at the end of the day, Higgins is the only one. And we've argued in the past, if it even happens with Higgins, again, more on that coming up. We've argued in the past that the 2-week window is pointless because the NFL, as you might have heard, is a deadline-driven league. All that matters is the last day to apply it. It could just be 1 day to apply it. But there is one benefit. Even though most teams will wait until closer to the deadline, some teams will apply the tag early because what's next week? The scouting combine. What's the scouting combine? Tampering Central. And what better way to tell all other teams to not bother to pre-negotiate a contract or strongly express interest in a player when talking to that player's agent in Indianapolis if the franchise tag is applied. It takes him off the table. It takes him out of play. And some teams, given the hectic nature of the scouting combine, they just like to apply the tag, so there's no chance they'll forget to do it the Tuesday after the combine. I think the workouts last until Monday. You don't want to put yourself in a deadline. You don't want to put yourself in a pinch. You don't want to just forget to apply the tag. Not that that would presumably happen, but we've seen some crazy things in the NFL as it relates to transactions. Remember the Elvis Dumervil fax machine snafu? Remember the trade that was going to send, was it A.J. McCarron? Is that who it was? From Cincinnati to Cleveland, and the Browns didn't turn the key on the launch sequence in time and notify the league of the trade, thereby blocking the trade from happening. So there's always a chance something screwy is going to happen if you do your business on a strict deadline basis. Do it early, no chance for a screw up. So there still could be a tag. I was going to say or two, but I think if anything, there's going to be one, unless there's a surprise out there. And the one would be Bengals receiver T. Higgins. And in theory, that's a surprise because the Bengals usually don't tag someone twice. It came out yesterday that the Bengals will likely apply the tag to T. Higgins unless they can sign him to a long-term deal. Then came the report from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN.com that the message has gotten through from the Bengals quarterback, Joe Burrow, to the front office. And that's really our second topic for today. The Bengals intend to attempt to sign receiver T. Higgins, receiver Jamar Chase, and defensive end Trey Hendrickson to long-term contracts. Intend to attempt. Whether or not they do it is a different issue. See, I think what's going on here is they know they have a problem with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has been making it clear that he expects them to keep key players around. It can't just be him making market value and then they'll just replace the accomplished veterans with draft picks who'll be younger and cheaper, and let's find out if they're any good. That doesn't work. They found that out when they let Jesse Bates go to Atlanta via free agency after he was tagged for a year and after they tried to backfill his position with Dax Hill via the first round. Didn't work out, and they could use Jesse Bates now. So Burrow has been pressuring them, and we broke this down last week. And look, I understand that Bengals fans don't want to hear this. Number one, I've learned over the past 24 years, fans don't like it when others talk about the things that make them worry about their team. They'd rather it not be discussed. But if you're a Bengals fan, deep down, you know that if Joe Burrow eventually becomes exasperated with the team putting winning behind money, he's going to want out. Just like Carson Palmer did 14 years ago. And 8 years after he took his stand with the Bengals, he was eventually traded right before the deadline in October to the Raiders after sitting at home all of training camp and the first several weeks of the regular season. He said in 2019, you need to put winning first and money second. And teams that have it flipped aren't really serious about trying to win. Burrow's comments over the past few weeks, most significantly the things he said on the Pardon My Take podcast, they suggest that the Bengals better get their act together or the clock is ticking on his decision to potentially draw a line in the sand, to potentially tap out on the Bengals. He's entering year 6. Palmer came to that conclusion after year 8. So, in the hopes of placating Burrow, they're going to try to sign Higgins and Chase and Hendrickson. Let's start with Higgins. He can be tagged, and it would be a 20% increase over what he made last year. $21.8 million was his franchise tag number. The 20% increase takes him to $26.18 million. 1 year, fully guaranteed. So if that's coming, and I remember going through this analysis with Dak Prescott when he was looking at his second tag with the Cowboys, and the Cowboys ended up giving him a 4-year, $160 million contract at the time. When you know, as the player, if you tag me, I got $26.18 million fully guaranteed for the next year. That's my bird in the hand. What are you going to offer me by way of two in the bush to get me to trade it in? And every offer that the Bengals make will need to be run through that prism. How does it compare to 1 year, $26.18 million? If the contract only has 1 year of fully guaranteed money and the next year doesn't vest until next year, what am I really getting by agreeing to a long-term deal? You control my rights beyond this season, and to control my rights beyond this season, you got to give me more than $26.18 million this year. Obviously, that wouldn't be the cap number. That would be a combination of signing bonus and other bonus possibly and salary. But if you want me to give up my ability to play for the Bengals for one more year at $26.18 million and then become a free agent next year because they're not going to tag him a third time. Nobody's getting tagged a third time. There may be an exception or two, but the third tag results in a 44% increase over your second tag or quarterback money. If you're not a quarterback, you're getting the average of the 5 highest cap numbers from the quarterback class the year before. No one's getting tagged a third time. The number becomes astronomical the third time. So he can say 1 more year and then see you later, Cincinnati Bengals. What are you going to offer to get him to give up the ability to make $26.18 million for 1 year? Not top of the market, but it's all cash this year. What are you going to give him to get him to trade that in? It's that simple. As to Jamar Chase, look, they could have done this last year. It's their own fault. They led him to believe they were going to do a long-term deal. They offered him a contract that had dollars that were acceptable, but the structure wasn't good enough. We've reported that multiple times. The structure wasn't good enough. At the end of the day, Chase ended up being pissed off that they didn't follow through on their promise. And this is why I'm thinking it could be a little bit of a shell game here. Trying to make Burrow happy by attempting to sign these guys while not really attempting to sign them. You can say about any player, well, we hope to sign him to a long-term deal. Yeah, on our terms, not his. The 2 circles on the Venn diagram still need to at least kiss in order to get a deal done. And Chase, I think, is going to want to at least $40 million per year in new money average. He might want more. Might be worth $45 million a year in new money average. Who knows? And I think part of what Chase is going to want this year, and we've said this before, a little extra compensation for the Triple Crown that he put together last year after they got him for less than $5 million. They got a Triple Crown, catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns from a guy to whom they paid less than $5 million. There may be a little bit of a Triple Crown tax that Chase applies. And the alternative is 21.8 or thereabouts. I think it's the number. The 5th-year option for Chase this year works out to being the same as the franchise tag last year for T. Higgins. And then next year it would be the franchise tag at a 20% increase, $26.18 million, or a long-term deal. And then Hendrickson. He's at less than half of the top of the market, and he's got consecutive 17.5 sack seasons. What will they offer him? They're not going to pay him Nick Bosa money, but halfway point between, I think he's around 16 right now, 34, do the math, 27 a year. Is it going to take more or less than 27? I don't know. But bottom line is, it's not going to be cheap to keep all 3. And they're going to have significant money invested in the receiver position. There was a time, I remember this happening when Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden were both with the Cardinals. The argument was, well, you can't afford to have 2 receivers making that kind of money. You just can't. You can't justify it under the cap. I think in today's NFL, you can, because you need those 2 great receivers. The Eagles have done it. And that was Burrow's ultimate point last week to our friends at PMT. Just do what the Eagles are doing. They're finding a way to manage the salary cap and pay everyone. And the key is doing it quickly. Don't drag your feet. Don't play games. Don't piss guys off with a contract structure that isn't as good as it needs to be. If you move quickly and decisively to sign the guys you know you're going to sign anyway, the sooner you put the money on the table, the better off you're going to be. Which leads to topic number 3 for today. Micah Parsons said recently that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the wheels are in motion for his long-term contract. He's entering year 5. He should have refused to play last year, a position that puts him in greater risk of significant injury than receiver or quarterback. $3 million for last year, that was a mistake. And I think the genius of the Cowboys dragging their feet last year with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons never felt that it was appropriate for him to say, I want mine now. If they had done Lamb and Prescott early, like they should have, I think Parsons might have said, okay, where's mine? I'm not playing this year for $3 million. This year, process is underway. Will they move quickly, or will they drag their feet again? By dragging your feet, you prevent reducing the cap number that allows you to go out and sign other players. And last year, Parsons said he hopes they'll go out and sign players, which they hadn't done the year before. And he said it again this year. And last year, the reason they didn't is because they waited too long with Lamb and they waited too long with Prescott. And then all of a sudden, before the season starts, they're signing any and all defensive tackles they can find to try to shore up one of their biggest weaknesses. You need to do it early. And I'm not saying you need to make a big splash in free agency, because you know that doesn't work when you pay guys top of the market who aren't top of the market talent, because the best guys get franchise tagged. But you need to be ready to move after the free agency market dies down. After those first 3, 4, 5 days, that's when the teams that have been patient and go out and shop for some bargains. And they can get guys for less than what teams paid right out of the gates when they want to have the press conference and hold up the jersey, take attention away from the local basketball team or hockey team or baseball team. Hey, pay attention to us. We've won the press conference. We can't win the games, but we can win the press conference. And we're going to overpay to do it. The smart teams will wait unless they're really desperate and they have a specific need and they have the money allocated to go out and make that big splash. They'll wait. And then there will be bargains available after those first few days of free agency. And that's why it's imperative on the Cowboys to get Parsons done sooner than later so they can free up cap space by doing a long-term deal and dropping his cap number from $21.3 million in 2025. They can use that money to go bargain shopping after the first few days of free agency. The Jacksonville Jaguars found themselves in an unexpected and probably unwanted bit of news last week when the report emerged, courtesy of Ryan Burr, who covers basketball for the Big Ten Network, reporting that the Steelers had called the Jaguars about a potential trade for quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who had just signed his long-term deal last year. Now, the Jaguars quickly said there's no chance he'll be traded, and we reported yesterday the Steelers never even called. Trevor Lawrence was on the Kay Adams show yesterday, and he said he's not going to Pittsburgh, and he said we love Jacksonville. And he also pointed out he has a no-trade clause. I'm curious about what happens next, because I think that the people at the very top of the Jaguars organization are fully committed to Trevor Lawrence. I also think, based on how this all happened, because I don't think Ryan Burr just made it up, it's an oddly specific thing to throw out there as just fabricated news. He claims someone from the Jaguars told him. He got it straight from the horse's mouth. We don't know who the horse is, but someone from the Jaguars told him. I think it's possible, if not probable, that someone in the organization, not at the very top, but someone who might not be on board with Trevor Lawrence as the long-term answer, decided to give a little nudge, drop a little turd in the punch bowl, and see what happens. And it worked. If that was the goal, it worked. Because Burr's tweet got picked up and it became a thing. Did the Steelers call the Jaguars about Trevor Lawrence? Even if they didn't, and we're told they didn't, the deeper message is, hey, if we're looking for a quarterback and we're exploring all options, maybe we should call the Jaguars. Maybe we should look into this Trevor Lawrence thing. Maybe they'd move him. Dead money charge would be $30 million. They'd avoid the rest of his contract. He's under contract for 6 more years. It averages, we did the math last week, it's about $43 million a year over 6 years. And there's still a lot of guarantees. And they'd need to do the deal quickly to avoid the early offseason roster / option bonus coming due, but it wouldn't be impossible. And it is something that I think we need to keep an eye on. Sorry, I got to multitask here. Got a little something going on. All right, and now we're back. It is something that they should at least consider if they get a phone call. He's not untouchable. He's not untradeable. He's not one of those few guys that you would look to in the National Football League as someone that would never, ever, ever be traded. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Joe Burrow. And there are others that fall into that category. Trevor Lawrence isn't there. So it'd be interesting to see what happens if there's a call, number one. And number two, will there even be a call? It's kind of a litmus test on Trevor Lawrence's status as a top 10, top 15 quarterback. I mean, he's got top of the market money when you look at new money average. From signing and when you look at the structure, the deal isn't one of those, wow. It's got some stuff in there that would make it less than some of the best contracts. But still, if he's regarded as a potential franchise quarterback, if not actual franchise quarterback, and by that I mean top 7, top 5, somebody's going to call. And if nobody calls, maybe the Jaguars are going to think, we really love this guy, but nobody else does. Nobody else loves him enough to make an exploratory phone call. And that's why I thought it was plausible that the Steelers called. Because the Steelers are going to be looking to upgrade the quarterback position. One way you do it is you find out who's available. Just because you call another GM, and obviously the Jaguars don't have a GM, so one of the problems was the Steelers wouldn't have known who to call. But just because you make the phone call doesn't mean you want to make the trade. That's what these guys do in the offseason. They talk to each other, and maybe you're thinking about trading for another quarterback. So what would the Jaguars want for Trevor Lawrence? That helps set the framework for what another quarterback would be worth in trade. A couple of years ago, the Commanders, after they were shut out of the sweetheart deal that was done between the Rams and the Lions as part of the Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade, that was all done between the two. There was no shopping of Stafford. The Lions were the target. Brad Holmes had just gotten the GM job. He had been with the Rams. It made sense. And it also gave the Rams a way to shove the Jared Goff contract and attach a first-round pick to it without it being conspicuous. It worked out perfectly. But the Commanders were like, what the hell? We would have been interested. So the year after that happened, Martin Mayhew, then the GM of the team, I think called every single team just to see if their starting quarterback might be available because they got dragged for calling the Chiefs. Oh, like Patrick Mahomes is going to be traded. Hey, we're turning over every rock. The phone call's free. So that's why I thought it made sense if the Steelers did it because maybe they're going to see who's out there and available in trade, or maybe they're thinking about this guy. Let's see what it would cost to get Trevor Lawrence, just so we know how to properly negotiate with the guy that we do want. But they didn't. But maybe someone will. And again, if someone within the organization decided to go rogue, it's genius if this is the case. Because number one, it was sufficiently obscure that somebody who covers the NFL on a regular basis didn't get burned and then would be pissed off. And it was enough when I saw it, I thought, this is too weird to ignore. Some guy that doesn't even cover the NFL, who's saying very stridently and very clearly when he's got nothing to really gain. It's not like an NFL fan who has Twitter or the cesspool currently known as X is going to say, oh, I need to follow Ryan Burr now for all my breaking NFL news. He doesn't really get anything out of it. I don't know how much he loses either. Because who's going to chastise Ryan Burr if he was lied to, and it looks like he was, at least to some degree, by his Jaguars horse's mouth source. So let's see what happens. I just think that it's fascinating, and I think Lawrence is in play. If someone would make the Jaguars an offer they can't refuse, I just have a feeling no one's going to make that offer. And that might tell the Jaguars all they need to know about what the league currently thinks of Trevor Lawrence. And that's not my opinion. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves and assess it. A couple of years ago, Lawrence was creeping toward the top 5. The last 2 seasons have not been great. This is his chance, coupled with new head coach Liam Cohen, to earn that contract. But this is also the chance for the next 4 weeks for the Jaguars to exit if someone out there who really loves Trevor Lawrence would decide to make the phone call. And would he waive the no-trade clause? It's one thing to say I'm not waiving it to go to Pittsburgh. What if the Rams would call? What if Sean McVay has taken a shine to Trevor Lawrence? and has decided this is my next great quarterback pupil. I'm going to use all my quarterback whispering skills to make him into the best player he can be. I'd be interested. Wouldn't any quarterback be interested in working with Sean McVay? And they have a young team that made it to the Final Eight last year. I'd definitely be interested in that. I wouldn't love paying 13% state income tax coming from a state where the state income tax is zero, but I definitely would be interested in being a pupil of Sean McVay. So I think there might be a team or two out there, if they would call and if they would make the Jaguars an offer they won't refuse. Trevor Lawrence might look at that and say, I have a no trade clause, but yeah, I'll waive it. And he gains nothing by saying anything now that would suggest he doesn't want to be in Jacksonville, because chances are he will be. You don't want to poison the well if you don't know you're definitely going to be drinking out of a different one. Next up, and I saw this last night, John Orand of Puck has a newsletter that comes out a couple of times a week. I'm a subscriber. And once every 2 weeks, once a week, there's something in there that I think is relevant to the PFT audience. And it's very relevant to learn more about the ambitions of Netflix. Netflix found a way to slip through the cracks and bogart a couple of games, a couple of high-profile games. Took from what presumably would have been CBS, 2 games that got moved from Sunday to Christmas Day. They had Chiefs at Steelers. They had Ravens at Texans. And Amazon wasn't happy because we're the streaming partner. We should have had those games on Christmas Day. Other networks probably not happy. A couple of, pretty good games that could have gone in primetime on NBC, primetime on ESPN, CBS package, Fox package. So what's Netflix want to do? Now, there was a time when I thought Netflix is positioning itself to buy the inevitable Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern international series. We see about, 3 or 4 of those games now, maybe 5, between England and Germany. Spain is on the docket this year. When you consider Netflix's global footprint, you get that 9:30 a.m. Eastern game later in the day in Europe, later in the day as we go farther to the east. You can get a potentially massive audience for that early Sunday morning U.S. East Coast time game. And when I was running that by somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but I do remember what was said. The response was, Netflix is going to be thinking bigger than that. Netflix doesn't want a less than package because those early Sunday morning games don't get the ratings like the games later in the day do. So the news from Puck yesterday, the Netflix chief content officer said on a Puck podcast that they're interested in a Sunday afternoon package. I saw that and I said, whoa, this changes everything. You've had Fox with the NFC package since 1994. They took it from CBS. You've had CBS with the AFC package since 1998. They took it from NBC. NBC was out of the NFL altogether until Sunday Night Football in 2006. Could a streamer come in and take a full Sunday afternoon package? I mean, never mind the fact that they'd have to put the apparatus in place to work 6-7 games on a Sunday. Never mind the fact that fans would be relegated to purchasing Netflix to see those games. Now, in the local markets, the games would be available on free TV. The NFL always does that for games that are on cable or streaming. There's an arrangement for the games involving the teams in a given market to be shown for free. But you're going to miss a lot of other games unless you buy Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. So this potentially will change everything. And it's not something that comes next decade. The current broadcast right deals have a clause that lets the NFL to get out 4 years early. 2029 season would be the last year of the current deals. I fully expect that the NFL is going to cancel the current deals early. Once the NBA got its latest TV package, I said, shit, NFL's definitely pulling the plug. And the key is this. One of the reasons why the league's broadcast deals keep going up and up and up, and every time there's a new deal, people say, oh, this is ridiculous. How's the network going to make money? How can they justify it? And then they pay it up, and then the next time around they pay even more. One of the keys to doing that is to have more seats at the table than you have plates. And now that we've got NBC, CBS, Fox, ESPN, and Amazon, you got 5 plates. If you can bring a 6th person to the party, or a 7th, or even an 8th, the price of the plate goes up. If you want to keep your plate, you got to pay up. And if you want to take somebody's plate, you really got to pay up. But we'll get back to you after we find out whether or not the person who currently has the plate will match or beat what you've offered for the plate. That's the game. And that's good business. It's good business. Might affect NBC in a very significant way come 2029. I might no longer be affiliated with NBC for reasons other than they finally woke up and fired my ass. But that's the game that's coming. And it's 4 years away. And Netflix is interested in taking one of the major packages. That is huge news. Because then what happens to Fox or CBS? I mean, shit, Fox has its contract with Tommy. $37.5 million, 10-year deal. The math doesn't work. He might be working the F1 races. Do they have baseball? He might be on some other sport at Fox if they would lose it. So if Fox keeps it, CBS might be in trouble. Maybe CBS swoops in to take Sunday Night Football. Maybe NBC takes Monday Night Football. But wait, if ESPN owns and operates NFL Network and Red Zone, maybe they get preferential treatment. Maybe NBC is left holding the bag. Maybe Amazon is left holding the bag. Somebody's going to be left holding the bag, or somebody that currently has one of the plates is going to get the tapas menu. They're going to get the small plate of the Sunday morning international game. Oh, you want to pay less? Okay, you get the games that get far fewer eyeballs. You can have the Sunday morning international series. So change is coming, and Netflix has made that clear by stating its intention that it's interested in one of the Sunday afternoon packages. It's going to be a wild 4 years. I hope I live to see what happens. One last topic. And here's what's going on. And this is why when I saw the Jonathan Martin story last Wednesday on ESPN.com, the excruciatingly long search for the needle in the haystack of word salad, I didn't want to do it. We still had Super Bowl aftermath. There were so many different angles to address following Philadelphia's 40-22 win over the Chiefs that wasn't nearly that close. I saw it, passed it along to the PFT writers. We just agreed. The whole thing, it's 12 years old. It's old news. Nobody's interested. Nobody's interested. We weren't even interested in scouring through the straw to find the kernel of interesting information, if there even was one. Turns out there was one, because Jonathan Martin said in that story that he never believed he was being bullied by Richie Incognito and others. And that finally hit the fan on Sunday. We talked about this yesterday. What's happened is, because the guy who was accused of being a bully is now bullying people on social media who are members of the media to say, oh, he never did anything wrong. He's a saint, Saint Richie. It's caused me to go back and take a closer look, even though I have no desire to do it. It's old news. It's from 2013. But I've gone back and studied some of the things that happened at the time, because his entire complaint with folks like me, Adam Schefter, others in the media, we dared to pass along the findings made by Ted Wells in the investigation that his firm performed after this all happened in November or so of 2013. The report came out February 14 of 2014. So if he's got a problem with us in the media, the problem is with Ted Wells, who created the report. Because at the end of the day, we read the report and we shared with our audiences the information contained in the report. If there's information in the report that he doesn't like, take it up with Ted Wells. Take it up with the NFL. The NFL is the one that commissioned the report. Ted Wells is the one who wrote the report after interviewing more than 100 people. Now, two things. Number one, I've started reading the report again. I suggest that all of you find the report and read it. Any of the folks, and I know this won't happen, the mouth-breathing incels on the cesspool now known as X just want to say, sue, sue, sue. They don't care about the facts. That's the irony of this. They're so caught up in the facts have justified Richie that they won't bother to go look at the facts. Go back and read the Ted Wells report. It's available. I'm going to write a story later today that will link to it. The story we wrote yesterday links to it. The report itself, if you read it, it's kind of hard to make the case to the Pope for canonization of Richie Incognito. Second, and this is important too, because the social media Richie Incognito stands who are saying, sue, sue, sue. He's had 11 years to rebut the contents of the Ted Wells report. And look, I agree with the possibility, because it was proven out in Ted Wells' next report from Deflategate that possibly he knew what the client wanted, the person paying his firm by the hour to do this investigation, and I'm sure they made many, many dollars because many, many hours were devoted. You interview more than 100 people in the Richie Incognito, Jonathan Martin case, you're going to rack up quite the lucrative bill. So if the same mindset that might have undermined the ultimate accuracy of the Deflategate investigation trickled over to the Incognito Martin investigation, it's fair to make that point. And he did to Bob Glauber of Newsday in 2015. And that got me to go back and look at what Richie Incognito's lawyer had to say when the Wells report first came out, Valentine's Day, 2014. Here's the statement that was issued by Mark Schammel, Incognito's lawyer at the time, to PFT on the day the report landed. Mr. Wells' NFL report is replete with errors. The facts do not support a conclusion that Jonathan Martin's mental health, drug use, or on-field performance issues were related to the treatment by his teammates. It is disappointing that Mr. Wells has gotten it so wrong, but not surprising. The truth, as reported by the Dolphins players and as shown by the evidence, is that Jonathan Martin was never bullied by Richie Incognito or any member of the Dolphins offensive line. We are analyzing the entire report and will release a thorough analysis as soon as it is ready. It's fine. It's good. Fair. We're still waiting for the analysis. It's been 11 years. 11 years and 4 days. We're still waiting. Where's the analysis of the errors throughout the Ted Wells report? Richie Incognito, his lawyers, his agents, they've had 11 years and 4 days to detail everything in that report they disagree with. I've never seen, I've never heard of any type of thorough report that analyzes the errors, the flaws, the problems with the Ted Wells report. But Jonathan Martin gives an interview to ESPN.com and he says, I never believed I was bullied, and everything's false. Everything's fake. Everything's made up. It has been exhausting, folks, but it's not surprising. This is where we are. This is our current society. I made this point yesterday in the item that we wrote at PFT. Truth isn't truth anymore. Truth is what we choose to believe, and then the challenge becomes ignoring anything that might conflict with what we choose to believe. Facts don't matter. It's what we believe. And this is a political comment that applies to everybody on both sides. Facts don't matter. What matters is what we believe, and if there's anything out there that contradicts what we believe, we'll just ignore it. Or we'll find a way to demean it. Or we'll attack the messenger. But we won't acknowledge that there are facts out there that maybe cut against what we choose to believe because, it's too hard to choose. It's a matter of pride. We can't choose to change our beliefs because then we look stupid for believing them in the first place. So we're just going to dig in, we're going to double down, and we're going to join the mob. We're going to find comfort in others who are doing the same damn thing we are. That's exactly what's playing out on the cesspool now known as X. And why don't I leave? Because there are still people on Twitter who are sane, number one, and who want NFL information. I've contemplated getting off of Twitter many times over the past couple of years, ever since it changed ownership. But unless and until a viable alternative that can serve the same number of people that we serve, I got to take the bad with the good. Assholes are everywhere. And I can deal with them. But it really is exhausting to see people be so stridently ignorant and refuse to go examine anything that might disagree with the things that they choose to believe. I believe the time has come for me to wrap up this edition of PFT PM. I thank you for some of your time. We'll continue to do this all week long. We'll be back tomorrow, ideally, but we definitely will be posting all day long this week, next week, every week of the year. You know how it goes, no days off. Back to work, I go. Back to work, you should go. Have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.